Chapter 39:10. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others followed Ren Zimei and the others into the depths of the training ground. As always, the ground was black. It was all black as far as the eye could see, giving people an indescribable feeling of oppression. Although I've been here once, I still feel very uncomfortable looking at this place. Shengguan Yingying sighed. Usually, no matter where it was, there would always be vitality. However, this place was lifeless. It was as if after coming here, they could not help but be stained with the aura of death. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, the environment here is very depressing. It's okay during the day, but the feeling at night is even worse. When Xiren shrugged, he could not help but think of the mood when they were wondering when the skeleton army would appear in the dark. That kind of nervous feeling was very uncomfortable. Mo Yunjua looked around, his eyes flashing with a strong sense of surprise. Previously, he only heard that the skeletons in this training ground were extremely powerful and that they had to be very careful. Now, after coming here, he realized that the environment here was so special. No wonder there are so many skeletons here. This place can't give birth to anything else at all. It can only develop these dead things. This is indeed a very strange place. Let alone you. I've been here many times, but I still feel very uncomfortable. Chu Jinfeng smiled helplessly. By the way, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. What is it? The last time you came here, didn't we find that one of the liches was very powerful? Hongzhuang directly said that the liches were evolved liches. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. I still remember this. Since that incident, we have reported this matter. Later, according to everyone's investigation, we found that there were indeed some liches that had evolved. Chu Jinfeng's face was full of emotion. As the strength of the liches increased, it became more difficult for us to deal with the skeleton army. Indeed, Beichen's deep eyes flashed with a complicated light. Later on, Penglai Palace should have increased the number of cultivators who are good at sound attacks, right? Ever since junior sister Bailey revealed this matter, Penglai Palace has indeed intended to recruit more cultivators who are good at sound attacks. However, to be honest, there are very few cultivators who are good at sound attacks. In addition, there are too few people who can reach this level of cultivation. Therefore, although they have recruited some, the number is not many. Now these cultivators who are good at sound attacks are very popular in the team. Every time, everyone wants to team up with them. I want to tell you that the current skeleton army is as stronger than before. Once they encounter the evolved liches, it will be more difficult to deal with them. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang showed a look of understanding, but she couldn't help but frown. So far, only the evolved lich has been found, and no other skeletons or soldiers have evolved. Not at the moment. Ren Ziheng said slowly. Beichen's eyes darkened. Not at the moment doesn't mean that it won't appear. Since the liches have begun to evolve, it proves that these guys who are stained with black aura may evolve. Chapter 39:11. If that's really the case, then the situation will be very complicated. Ren Ziheng's expression turned serious. I hope that won't happen. Just based on the current battle strength of the skeleton army, it's already very difficult to deal with them. If they get stronger, then it's really... Bailey Hongzhuang and Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't have such optimistic thoughts. According to their predictions, it was only a matter of time before they evolved. It was just that they hadn't found the opportunity to find the golden flower yet. Everyone moved stealthily in an orderly manner. In the process, they also met other teams, but most of them stayed at the periphery. After all, the deeper they went, the bigger the skeleton army they met. Therefore, teams that weren't strong enough would stay at the periphery according to their strength. Senior brother Ao, where is the entrance to the upper realm that you mentioned? Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to Ao Lingxiao's side, her eyes flashing with curiosity. The entrance is at the center of the training ground. It's still very far from here. However, the skeletons there are very powerful. If you want to pass through, you have to be at least a Starlight Realm cultivator. Even if you're a Starlight Realm cultivator, if your battle strength isn't strong enough, you might not be able to pass through. Ao Lingxiao lowered his voice and said. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a look of understanding. I see. However, since the skeletons in the training ground don't appear during the day, then wouldn't it be fine if we rush over during the day? Then there won't be any problems. It's not as simple as you think. Ao Lingxiao shook his head. Near the entrance to the upper realm, it's night all day. There's no day at all. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were astonished when they heard this. There's only night. That's right. I don't really understand this point, but it's indeed like that. Ao Lingxiao shrugged. His brows were filled with a trace of confusion. Not only that, there's a layer of restriction at the entrance. If you're a Starlight Realm cultivator, you can directly enter. On the contrary, if one's cultivation hasn't reached the Starlight Realm, then one will be directly blocked and utterly unable to enter. I didn't think that there would be a restriction. In that case, others will indeed be unable to enter. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. After giving it some thought, she felt that this method was very reasonable. If anyone could enter directly, then there would be no need to separate the upper realm from the Shengxian continent. If you're not strong enough, you'll be bullied in the upper realm. That's definitely not a good thing. Ao Lingxiao's expression was serious and solemn. Actually, although it is said that cultivators can enter the upper realm as long as they reach the first level of the astral light realm, it is usually better to enter the upper realm later. Because the cultivators of the upper realms are all extremely powerful. Apart from some youths, most of the cultivators above the age of 20 have already reached the astral boundary. If he was only Star Brilliance level 1 when he went, once he encountered danger, it would be extremely troublesome. After all, it doesn't feel good to be unable to deal with anyone. I understand. This kind of feeling is indeed unpleasant. Bailey Hongzhuang lightly nodded. Thinking back to when they first came to Penglai Island, they also felt this way. Whenever they encountered a slightly stronger cultivator, they would need to be everywhere. Chapter 39:12. Fortunately, their luck was not bad at that time, and they were not directly found by Gao Hanchun. Instead, Gao Hanchun was trapped. Otherwise, they might not have survived until now. In that case, it would be better for us to increase our strength a little more before we go, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. We can wait for Yingying and the others to go together. Hearing that, Di Beichen smiled. Indeed, when Xiren and the others break through to the Starlight Realm, our strength should improve again. At that time, when we go to the upper realm, our ability to protect ourselves will be stronger. Yes, that would be the best. Ao Lingxiao was very happy. He was originally worried that after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others went to the upper realm, he would not be able to contact them for a while. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood this point, he did not need to worry anymore. Thinking about it, when Xiren and the others break through to the Starlight Realm, he would have broken through to the Starlight Realm long ago. When he thought about how he could actually find Di Beichen of the Di family, who was wandering outside, he sometimes felt as if he was in a dream. He simply could not believe that all of this was real. Fortunately, it was not an illusion, and the heavens had given him a glimmer of hope. Hongzhuang, what are you guys whispering about? Shangguan Yingying, who was walking in front, turned her head and asked Hongzhuang curiously. Nothing, just chatting. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, and then sped up to Shangguan Yingying's side. As night slowly fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stopped and chose a safer place to stop. Let's stay here tonight. Although this place is not very deep, it is not the outer area, Ren Zimei slowly said. Okay, Di Beichen replied. Chu Jinfeng smiled faintly. Actually, we usually just stay in a place slightly deeper than this. But now that we have 3 Starlight Realm cultivators in the team, we can go deeper. Speaking of which, this is all thanks to you guys. How is this thanks to us? Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it will be. If it weren't for us, you wouldn't have gone there. Bailey Hongzhuang was not a stupid person. On the contrary, she had an exquisite heart. With the cultivation of Ren Ziheng and the others, if they went too deep, the danger would increase greatly. It was definitely not a place they wanted to go. However, the 3 of them had already broken through to the Starlight tier, and there wasn't any benefit to staying here to temper themselves. Therefore, Ren Ziheng and the other two definitely made such a decision in consideration of them. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the gazes of Ren Ziheng and the others couldn't help but change. Bailey Hongzhuang was really smart. In this training ground, no matter where we are, we will encounter danger. We will be safer if we follow you. Ren Zimei smiled faintly. However, we should still be alert. An army of skeletons may appear here at any time. We must be extra careful. Everyone's face was solemn as they looked around vigilantly. As long as there was the slightest movement, they would definitely react immediately. Chapter 39:13. Yunjue, this is your first time coming to this training ground. I'm afraid there are some things you don't understand. Bewitching stood beside Mo Yunjue and slowly said. Among all of them, Mo Yunjue was the only one who had never been here before. Mo Yunjue nodded. Indeed, I hope to see it tonight. If there is an army of skeletons, pits will appear on the ground, and these skeletons will come out of the pits. So once you discover that there is a change in the ground, you need to be prepared immediately. If there is a pit in the ground, you need to leave immediately. The strength of these skeletons is not small. If you are not careful, you may directly break your legs. Bewitching reminded. So that's how it is. Mo Yunjue's calm face did not show any change in expression, but his eyes quietly became dignified. If it was others who said that this place was very dangerous, he may not care. But since even Bewitching said so, it proved that the level of danger here was very high. As the night gradually deepened, not only did everyone not relax, but on the contrary, their spirits were constantly in a tense situation. Senior brother Ren, will we definitely encounter an army of skeletons in this training ground? Shangguan Yingying waited for an hour and did not see any skeletons appear, so she could not help but ask. That's not necessarily true. Ren Ziheng shook his head. Generally speaking, the deeper you go, the higher the possibility of encountering an army of skeletons. Based on where we are now, we will not encounter an army of skeletons every time. This is all based on luck. The army of skeletons will appear at any time, so it is possible for them to appear anywhere. However, the closer we are to the center, not only will the probability of encountering an army of skeletons be higher, but the strength of the army of skeletons will also be stronger. I understand. Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. Maybe our luck today is very good, and we did not encounter an army of skeletons. If that's the case, then it's also very good. Everyone maintained a tense state until the sky gradually brightened. Only then did they relax. I didn't expect our cloud rising to be so good. We did not encounter an army of skeletons. I was nervous for the whole night. Shangguan Yingying relaxed and sat down. She didn't do anything the whole night, but under that kind of tense state, she also felt very tired. Let's rest for a while. We'll continue later. Bailey Hongzhuang also sat down and turned to look at Mo Yunjue. Were you disappointed that we didn't meet last night? A little. Mo Yunjue smiled faintly. We had the same feeling as you when we first met him. However, after meeting him once, we really hope that we won't meet him again. Ziren shook his head and sighed. After resting and reorganizing, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest of the 9 people continued their journey. Bailey Hongzhuang observed the various characteristics of the training ground as they walked. According to their judgment, if they wanted to concoct a healing medicine that could completely restrain the power of darkness, they would definitely need something in this training ground. However, she would have to slowly find out what it was. Unfortunately, as far as the eye could see, there was almost nothing here other than soil. She couldn't figure out what it could be. Chapter 39:14. I'm just looking to see if there's anything here that can be used as a medicinal ingredient. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Bewitching raised his eyebrows. There doesn't seem to be anything here apart from dirt. It'll be very difficult to find anything that can be used as a medicinal ingredient. Indeed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. I'm just looking around. The 100 Flowers Gate sent people here to search, but they didn't find anything in the end. This place has been corroded by the power of darkness to the point where not even a blade of grass grows. It's impossible for any medicinal ingredients to grow here. Because of this, the 100 Flowers Gate hasn't made any progress. That's right. Ever since they found out that the medicine you made had a suppressive effect, the people from the 100 Flowers Gate wanted to meet you, but they were rejected. Right now, there are many people from the 100 Flowers Gate outside of Penglai Palace who want to meet you and invite you to join them. Ren Zime's eyes rippled with emotion. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang made the medicine, she had become famous on Penglai Island. Almost every faction wanted to poach her. Among all the factions, the 100 Flowers Gate was the most eager. I don't plan on going anywhere else. Bailey Hongzhuang blinked. Actually, the 100 Flowers Gate's judgment isn't wrong. My judgment is the same as theirs. If we want to find an antidote that can completely suppress the power of darkness, the most important ingredient must be in this place filled with the power of darkness. However, we'll have to carefully observe what it is. Junior sister Bailey, then you'll have to work hard. If you can really make it, then it'll be amazing. Chu Jinfeng praised. If anyone else said this, he wouldn't believe them at all. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was different. Bailey Hongzhuang really did have the ability to do so. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others went deeper, they found that the number of cultivator groups around them had decreased. The deeper they went, the fewer cultivator groups there were. However, as they walked, they still encountered a group. There were 10 people in this team, which was obviously not a lot among the many large teams. However, from their performance, one could tell that they were all elites. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not pay too much attention to this team. However, Ren Zime's words attracted everyone's attention. Look, isn't that Suing Xue? I didn't expect her to come here to train as well. Ren Zime's eyes were filled with emotion. She could not help but look at Mo Yunjue from the corner of her eyes and said, "What a coincidence." Yesterday, they had seen Suing Xue looking for Mo Yunjue alone. Who would have thought that they would meet again in this training ground? It was indeed fate. However, they did not know what Suing Xue and Mo Yunjue had talked about yesterday. Following Ren Zime's words, everyone instantly recalled what they had seen the day before. Their gazes couldn't help but wander between Suing Xue and Mo Yunjue. Facing everyone's gazes, Mo Yunjue's expression remained cold as if nothing had happened. Chapter 39:15. The cultivators around Suing Xue also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's group, and their eyes flashed with a thick color of surprise. Isn't that Mo Yunjue? He Bingrui, who was beside Suing Xue, had astonishment in her eyes. Xue, didn't he reject you when you invited him to the training grounds yesterday? He said that he didn't have any plans for now. So why did he meet you here today? Could it be that he purposely said that to reject you? Suing Xue's expression was already ugly, and when she heard He Bingrui's question, her expression couldn't help but become even uglier. Bingrui, how would I know what he was thinking? If he rejected me, then so be it. It can't be, right? You already gave him a lot of face by taking the initiative to invite him, and he actually rejected you? Isn't this too much? He Bingrui looked at Mo Yunjue in disbelief. Suing Xue was a top beauty in Penglai Palace Hall, and there were countless men who chased after her, but she didn't care about them. Only Mo Yunjue had a different feeling. However, Mo Yunjue was outstanding and elegant, and he was also the inheritor of Devil Training Pagoda, so his potential was limitless. If he was with Suing Xue, he would be very suitable. It was because of this that she had encouraged Suing Xue to take the initiative to greet Mo Yunjue and invite him to join the training. However, she didn't expect that Mo Yunjue would reject her. It was fine if Mo Yunjue didn't come, but now that he had coincidentally met them, wasn't this a slap in the face? Where would Suing Xue put her face? Looking at He Bingrui's indignant look, Suing Xue couldn't help but pull her hand and say, "Lower your voice. Haven't I embarrassed myself enough? Won't everyone know what you're saying?" Hearing that, He Bingrui restrained her voice, but the puzzlement in her eyes was still very strong. Seeing that, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. I seem to have heard the sound of a heart breaking. Shangguan Yingying sighed as she spread out her hands. Ren Zimei nodded. I think so too. Looking at the situation, it seems like the falling flowers have feelings for each other, but the heartless flowing water is heartless. When Xiren Di Beichen and the rest didn't say anything, Mo Yunjua's attitude was completely within their expectations. After all, the person that Mo Yunjua liked was much more outstanding than Suing Xue. Actually, this isn't strange. Even though Suing Xue is very pretty, she can't be considered a peerless beauty. Yunju is so outstanding, it's not strange that he doesn't like her. Shangguan Yingying looked as if it was only natural. In her opinion, the person Mo Yunjua liked was Bailey Hongzhuang. Suing Xue looked pretty good, but if she was compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, the difference was huge. It was only natural that Mo Yunjua would ignore her. Suing Xue isn't pretty enough? Ren Zimei was a little astonished. Then junior brother Mo's taste is really not ordinary. In any case, I don't think so. After all, looking at Hong Zhuang's face every day, I don't have any feelings for ordinary beauties. As soon as she said this, Ren Zimei couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. She nodded and said, what you said is also true. Junior sister Bailey's beauty is enough to topple a city. When I first saw her, I was stunned for a long time, thinking that junior sister Bailey was just a flower vase. Chapter 39:16. Faced with everyone's guesses, Mo Yunjua did not even bat an eye at them, as if this had nothing to do with him. He had never thought that he would be so popular after coming to Penglai Palace. To other men this might be a very enjoyable thing, but to him, it was just trouble. Because of this, he rarely went to other places other than the cultivation area and his residence to avoid attracting more trouble. As for the Suing Xue that everyone was talking about, he only remembered that there was such a person. He didn't even know her name. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest noticed this, they couldn't help but quicken their steps. Since it was true, they would only attract unnecessary trouble if they continued to move forward together. It was better for them to separate. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest quickened their steps, a voice suddenly rang out from Suing Xue's group. I never thought that Junior Mo, who has been in the limelight recently, would also be a liar. What a pity. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but stop in their tracks. Their gazes turned towards the cultivator who had spoken. Suing Xue and the rest clearly didn't expect someone to suddenly speak, and immediately turned their heads. After seeing the person who had spoken, Suing Xue's face darkened. Zheng Haipeng, why are you causing trouble for no reason? He Bingrui couldn't help reprimanding him. Zheng Haipeng glanced at He Bingrui, but his gaze couldn't help but land on Suing Xue. When he saw that Suing Xue had her head lowered and didn't speak, the unhappiness in his heart became even stronger. What? Did I say something wrong? Zheng Haipeng looked unconvinced. After glancing coldly at Mo Yunjua, he said, previously, when Ying Xue went to ask him, he clearly said that he had no intention of coming to the training ground. Yet we met here today. If this isn't a lie, then what is? Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest frowned slightly. Their gazes landed on Zheng Haipeng. They never thought that such a thing would happen at such a time. Let's go. Mo Yunjua's face was cold. He had no intention of paying attention to Zheng Haipeng's words, as if the person Zheng Haipeng was talking about was not him. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. Since Mo Yunjua didn't have any objections, they didn't care anymore. When Zheng Haipeng saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were planning to leave, he became even more motivated. I was wondering how powerful he was. He's just a coward. He doesn't even dare to speak now. I really don't know if those women who like him are blind. Zheng Haipeng secretly spat, his face full of disdain. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but frown. They all knew that this matter had nothing to do with Mo Yunjua. Previously, when Suing Xue had gone to find Mo Yunjua, they hadn't mentioned going to the training ground. Therefore, it was reasonable for Mo Yunjua to say such words. It was only after they had mentioned this matter that Mo Yunjua had agreed. It was also unexpected for them to meet here today. Chapter 39:17. This Zheng Haiping is also an inner palace disciple, and his abilities are not bad. Among Su Yingshua's pursuers, he's one of the most famous. Basically, everyone knows about him. However, Su Yingxua doesn't seem to have any feelings for him, so even if he pursues her passionately, Su Yingxua has never responded, Ren Zimei said slowly. Hearing that, Shang Guanyin instantly understood. So he's treating Yunju as his love rival. He has pursued Su Yingxua for so long without any results. On the contrary, Su Yingxua directly invited Yunju, so it's normal that he can't take it. Ren Zimei nodded slightly. That's right. He must be extremely angry after knowing about this. Now that he's met junior brother Mo, it's natural for him to mock him. This person is definitely crazy. What does him not being able to pursue Su Yingxua have to do with Yunju? Shang Guanyin revealed a look of disdain. He can't pursue her because he doesn't have the ability, yet he's blaming others for being charming. What a joke. Forget it, let's go. Mo Yunjua's brows revealed a hint of displeasure, but more of it was coldness. He had no thoughts about Su Yingxua, and didn't plan to get into any trouble because of this woman. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest frowned. Zheng Haiping's words were undoubtedly provoking them, but it was more of a provocation between love rivals. To this, if Mo Yunjua could take it, they naturally didn't plan to stand out. After all, Zheng Haiping was someone who liked to cause trouble. If they were to bother with him, there would be a lot of trouble. Let's not bother with these senseless people, and just leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was cold. She hated this kind of man the most. Only the person involved knew about love. If he couldn't pursue her, he would start to find trouble with others. This was a problem of tolerance. When Zheng Haiping saw that Mo Yunjua was ignoring him, he couldn't help but become even more anxious. Yingxua, look at this guy. He's just a coward. I've already said so much, and he still doesn't dare to bother with me. What exactly is it about him that made you have a whole new level of respect for him? Zheng Haiping looked at Su Yingxua with a pleased and puzzled expression. Mo Yunjua not paying any attention to him was an act of a coward. Coincidentally, he could use this chance to perform well in front of Su Yingxua, and let her know who was the real man between him and Mo Yunjua. Su Yingshua's expression was already very ugly, and when she heard Zheng Haiping's words, she became even more displeased. Su Yingxua raised her head, and saw Mo Yunjua's cold expression from beginning to end, as if he wasn't concerned about this matter. She couldn't help feeling a chill in her heart. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to develop feelings for a man. She didn't expect the other party to ignore her. It really hurt her self-esteem. Could it be that to Mo Yunjua, she really wasn't special at all? His hands gradually clenched under his sleeves, tightly pinching his sleeves. A myriad of emotions flashed through his mind. Zheng Haiping, we already didn't provoke you, yet you keep provoking us time and time again. What is the meaning of this? Chu Jinfeng looked at Zheng Haiping unhappily. It was one thing for Zheng Haiping to quarrel with him, but now he actually said that Mo Yunjua was a coward. Wasn't this a little too much? Chapter 39:18. Chu Jinfeng frowned, unable to hide the disgust in his eyes. He had never had a good impression of Zheng Haiping. It was fine that they didn't interact with each other normally, but he had always disliked Zheng Haiping's way of doing things. Who would have thought that Zheng Haiping would take the initiative to provoke him, and even go overboard with his words? Zheng Haiping, it's your own problem if you can't get what you want. Why are you implicating others? Am I wrong? Zheng Haiping sneered. I've already said so much, but he still hasn't reacted. If he's not a coward, then what is he? This kind of person isn't worthy of Yingshua's liking. I just want Yingxua to see the truth. Hearing that, Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjua. He hadn't known Mo Yunjua for long, so he didn't know much about him. He only felt that Mo Yunjua was usually very cold and didn't like to talk. But since he was a member of their team, he naturally couldn't stand to see others humiliating him. However, Zheng Haiping's words had already gone overboard, but Mo Yunjua still didn't have any reaction. Chu Jinfeng really didn't know if he should say that Mo Yunjua was magnanimous or something. Not only Chu Jinfeng, But the cultivators in Su Yingshue's team also sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. They originally thought that Imo Yunjue was very strong and should be a real man. Who would have thought that he liked to swallow his pride so much? It was really unbelievable. Yingxue, although Imo Yunjue is indeed very handsome, I think Zheng Haiping is right. He has already said so much, but he still doesn't have any reaction. He's not like a man at all. He Bingrui couldn't help but say. Su Yingxue bit her lips and looked at Imo Yunjue with a complicated gaze. She also didn't expect such a thing to happen, and his reaction was also unbelievable. Compared to everyone's doubts, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching couldn't help but look at each other. Others didn't understand, but they understood very well. The reason why Imo Yunjue didn't have any reaction was because he didn't care about this matter at all. It also proved that he didn't have any feelings for Su Yingxue, but that didn't mean that he didn't have a temper. This was because Imo Yunjue's personality was different from others. When others got angry, they might argue, but Imo Yunjue wouldn't argue, because he would kill the moment he made a move. It was just that the others didn't understand his temperament. He believed that after they understood, Zheng Haiping would regret offending him. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking, Imo Yunjue's figure suddenly moved, like a bolt of lightning, quickly attacking Zheng Haiping. Bang! To be. Zheng Haiping was looking at everyone complacently, already treating Imo Yunjue as a coward. He didn't expect that Imo Yunjue would suddenly make things difficult for him, so he didn't have time to react, and was sent flying. Seeing this, everyone present couldn't help but be stunned. No one had expected that Imo Yunjue, who hadn't said a word, would suddenly make a move and be so ruthless. Su Yingxue and He Bingrui looked at each other in dismay. A second ago, they thought that Imo Yunjue didn't have any temper, but in the next second, they felt that Imo Yunjue's temper wasn't small at all. Chapter 39:19. Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng were also stunned on the spot. They looked at Imo Yunjue with a dull gaze. This reaction was completely different from his previous attitude, so much so that they couldn't react for a while. Shangguan Yingying was also stunned. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva as she looked at Imo Yunjue in astonishment. Yunjue, it's fine if you don't make a move, but once you make a move. Looking at Shangguan Yingying's stunned expression, Xiren chuckled and whispered in her ear. Yingying, you forgot that Yunjue is the young master of Shirtian Pavilion. Don't you know how Shirtian Pavilion usually acts? Shangguan Yingying immediately understood what was going on when she heard this. Shirtian Pavilion had always been a swift and decisive force. They didn't talk much, but every time they did something, it was very shocking. It seemed that Imo Yunjue was indeed worthy of being the young master of Shirtian Pavilion. His way of doing things was completely the same as his sex. Zheng Haiping was lying on the ground. He felt that his internal organs had almost shifted under that palm. His body was burning with pain, and even breathing became difficult. Just as he was about to sit up, Zheng Haiping spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his face quickly became pale, and his spirit was dispirited to the extreme. He looked at Imo Yunjue in disbelief. Although he knew that Imo Yunjue had obtained the inheritance of the demon training tower, in his opinion, Imo Yunjue's strength shouldn't be very strong. However, when the other party made a move like this, he knew that he had completely underestimated Imo Yunjue's strength. This kind of strength was definitely above the Starlight Realm. At least, he wasn't Imo Yunjue's opponent at all. Unfortunately, even if he knew this at this moment, it was too late. The intense pain in his body told him that he was seriously injured, and he couldn't even stand up. At this time, Imo Yunjue coldly glanced at Zheng Haiping, and then said to Ren Zimei and the others, "Against this kind of trash, there's no need to waste your breath. It's just a waste of time." His handsome face was full of indifference, as if this matter had not attracted his attention at all, as if he had just casually dealt with an insignificant grasshopper. "We can go now." He had originally planned to ignore it, but Zheng Haiping was relentless and kept looking for trouble. Ren Zimei and the others couldn't stand it anymore. Since that was the case, he might as well directly solve this problem and get it done once and for all. Otherwise, There would be flies buzzing around his ears. Rin Zimei and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. The two smiled faintly and said, "Since the matter has been resolved, then let's go." "All right." Shangguan Yingying nodded. "Now there's no annoying guy chattering there." Just as everyone was preparing to leave, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said to Suing Xue and the others, "Yunjue indeed didn't have the intention to come to the training ground. It's just that we suddenly talked about it the night before. So he decided to come at the last minute. He's not someone who likes to lie." Mo Yunjue didn't like to explain, but she couldn't just let others pin this kind of name on Mo Yunjue's head. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Suing Xue was slightly stunned, but immediately understood. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't stay any longer and disappeared from Suing Xue and the others' sight. Chapter 39:20. When Suing Xue and the rest came to Zheng Haipeng's side, they saw that Zheng Haipeng's aura was extremely weak. It was obvious that he had suffered a severe injury. Noticing this, everyone's eyes couldn't help but be filled with shock. Mo Yunjue had only casually attacked, yet he was able to injure Zheng Haipeng to such an extent. His abilities were simply too terrifying. However, the next scene was even more out of everyone's expectations. Not long after, Zheng Haipeng actually stopped breathing and died. How could this be? Suing Xue's eyes shone with disbelief. Mo Yunjue had only attacked once. With Zheng Haipeng's abilities, even if it was a cultivator of the Starlight Realm or above, he would at most be injured. There was absolutely no possibility of him dying. However, Zheng Haipeng had actually died. He Bingrui and the rest were also dumbfounded when they saw this scene. They were even in disbelief, wondering if they had seen wrongly. However, Zheng Haipeng really did not make a sound. Zheng Haipeng actually died just like that. He Bingrui was completely dumbfounded. That Mo Yunjue's attack was simply too ruthless. Killing him in one strike, he didn't even give him a chance to live. The rest of the people were also in a daze. What Zheng Haipeng had said previously was indeed overboard, and normal people would not be able to accept it. However, to kill him in one strike, this Mo Yunjue was indeed powerful. This newcomer Junior Mo is truly impressive. His attack was swift and decisive, not giving anyone a chance to regret. Zheng Haipeng's death is truly unjust. This is too unbelievable. From what I see, this Junior Mo is also not someone to be trifled with. It's better to stay away from him in the future. Everyone sighed. As expected, those who were with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were all abnormal. Even though he was just a newcomer, his abilities were already so strong. No wonder Master Long and the rest had used such high conditions to recruit him. At this moment, everyone understood that Mo Yunjue was someone who did not like to speak, but definitely could not be offended. Otherwise, the other party would not even give you a chance to explain and would immediately take your life. Yingxue, this Mo Yunjue is too scary. He Bingrui couldn't help but hold Suing Xue's hand. Killing the other party without a word, this method is simply terrifying. Previously, when Mo Yunjue didn't speak, she thought that Mo Yunjue didn't have any masculinity. Now, she knew how scary Mo Yunjue was. However, Suing Xue's eyes were shining with admiration. Previously, when everyone thought that Mo Yunjue was a coward, she didn't believe them at all. From her point of view, Mo Yunjue had no reason to fear Zheng Haipeng. When Mo Yunjue made his move, she only felt that Mo Yunjue was too domineering. Not talking nonsense and directly attacking was the way a hero should act. At that moment, Suing Xue only felt her heart sprouting. When she thought of how Mo Yunjue attacked, she felt her heart thumping uncontrollably. When He Bingrui saw Suing Xue's expression, she couldn't help but wave her hand in front of her eyes. Yingxue, what are you thinking about? Hearing this, Suing Xue came back to her senses. Her beautiful face blushed slightly as she shook her head. Nothing. Chapter 39:21. Suing Xue blushed. She felt that Mo Yunjue was the man of her dreams. He had such powerful strength and a swift and decisive style. He was the type she liked the most. That serious look was deeply imprinted in her heart. She felt that he was exceptionally handsome. Seeing Su Yingxue like that, He Bingrui understood her thoughts and couldn't help but shake her head helplessly. Looking at your situation, it seems that you have really fallen for him. Before today, I might have only had a good impression of him, but after today's incident, I really like him. Su Yingxue clasped her hands together, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Her mind was filled with Mo Yunjue's appearance, and she felt that her life was suddenly filled with brilliance. Her entire person was immersed in pink happiness. This Mo Yunjue doesn't look like someone easy to deal with. He was so ruthless the moment he made a move. He's definitely a ruthless character, He Bingrui couldn't help but say. Su Yingxue nodded. I know what you're saying, but I feel that it's precisely because of his appearance that he's exceptionally charming. You're right. He's indeed more manly than ordinary men. After thinking for a moment, He Bingrui agreed with Su Yingxue's opinion. After all, compared to Zheng Haiping, who only knew how to talk big, Mo Yunjue's way of doing things was much more domineering. In my opinion, this Mo Yunjue is also a person of few words, so there must be very few women who can get close to him. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying already have lovers, and Ren Zimei is now with Chu Jinfeng. As such, Mo Yunjue is completely alone. Since you like him, you have to seize the opportunity. There are many women in Penglai Palace who admire him, He Bingrui said. Su Yingxue nodded with a smile. I won't give up. After Bailey Hongzhuang and her group left Su Yingxue's group, they continued to move forward. I didn't expect Zheng Haiping to be so narrow-minded. He deserves to be taught a lesson today. It's just that this fellow usually has a big mouth. I don't know if he will spread it around later. Ren Zimei frowned. She had a certain understanding of Zheng Haiping. This guy had always been a blabbermouth. Many things would change completely once they reached his mouth. This time, Mo Yunjue had seriously injured him. Whether it was because of his face or other reasons, he would not let this matter go so easily. Zheng Haiping has already learned his lesson. I believe that he won't have the guts in the future. Otherwise, if Yunju attacks again, wouldn't his injuries be even more serious? Chu Jinfeng said with a smile. However, what Mo Yunjue said next stunned them. You don't have to worry about that, because he won't be able to speak in the future. As soon as Mo Yunjue said this, Ren Zimei and the others were stunned. For a moment, they couldn't understand the true meaning behind his words. Junior brother Mo, according to what you said, could it be that Zheng Haiping? Ren Ziheng couldn't help but say. That's right. He's already a dead man. Mo Yunjue's expression was indifferent and cold, as if he was talking about something insignificant. Gulp. Chu Jinfeng swallowed his saliva and looked at Mo Yunjue in a daze. Chapter 39-22. Looking at the stunned expressions of Ren Ziheng and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but say, This is Yunjue's usual style. You'll get used to it. As soon as these words were spoken, Ren Ziheng and the others could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang, then looked at Mo Yunjue, and then nodded their heads. They had also seen through it. Yunjue rarely speaks, and has always directly taken action to solve the problem. Chu Jinfeng could not help but cup his hands towards Mo Yunjue. Junior brother Mo, I admire you, I admire you. Noticing Chu Jinfeng's look of disbelief, Mo Yunjue could not help but explain. That kind of guy is destined to be an opponent who likes to find trouble. Instead of wasting time, it's better to get it done once and for all. I've never liked trouble. Junior brother Mo is right. This is indeed a good way to get it done once and for all. Chu Jinfeng praised. Mo Yunjue was really a straightforward person. When he explained this reason, he could not refute it at all. After continuing to move forward for a while, Ren Ziheng finally said, Let's stop here. If we continue to go deeper, the skeleton army will be even larger. Let's see if we can deal with it first. Then we'll decide whether to continue or not. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded. Okay. Immediately after, everyone rested here. After rushing for a day, they had naturally consumed some energy. At night, they had to be on guard against the skeleton army that could appear at any time. Naturally, they had to adjust themselves to their best condition to be able to deal with it better. What's more, after arriving here, the probability of encountering the skeleton army would greatly increase. Whether they would be so lucky again, even they themselves were not sure. The curtain of night slowly fell, and the entire training ground was pitch black. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all gathered together, cautiously paying attention to their surroundings, on guard against the skeleton army that could appear at any time. The surroundings were quiet, and not the slightest sound could be heard. It was so quiet that it was somewhat frightening. This person waited quietly, and did not hear any movement for a long time. Just as everyone was thinking about whether their luck would be so good today, suddenly, a sound attracted everyone's attention. Kacha! Crack! Hearing these soft sounds, Ren Ziheng and the others couldn't help but look at each other, and a trace of seriousness quickly appeared on their faces. The skeleton army is about to appear. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately became serious. Every time an army of skeletons appeared, it was extremely terrifying. They had to be careful when dealing with it. As the sound grew louder and louder, everyone realized that the sound came from behind them. It was still some distance away from them. The skeleton army is here? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows. His eyes were filled with curiosity. He had heard about this skeleton army long ago. It was only today that he had the opportunity to see it with his own eyes. Bewitching nodded. They're already here. Although they're still some distance away from us, it won't be long before they reach us. We have to be alert and be careful. I can only hope that this skeleton army comes from one direction, and will not appear from other directions. Otherwise, if we are surrounded like last time, the situation will be terrible. Chu Jinfeng sighed. Chapter 39-23. Let's go over and take a look. Bewitching's eyes glinted as he spoke in a deep voice. Hearing this, everyone nodded and moved together, heading towards the direction of the skeleton's voice. However, when they were halfway there, they suddenly heard someone calling for help. Help! Is there anyone? Save me! Hearing this voice, everyone looked at each other. It seemed that someone had already met the skeleton army before them. Based on the cry for help, the other party's ability was obviously not as strong as the skeleton army. They might have already been surrounded by the skeleton army, and were in a difficult situation. Someone is in danger. Let's go and take a look. Runzime's face turned grave as she quickly spoke. The next moment, everyone increased their speed and rushed forward. However, when they saw the scene in front of them, they felt helpless. I didn't expect it to be Suing Shue and the others. This is really not an ordinary coincidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's black phoenix eyes flashed with a touch of surprise, and she couldn't help but sigh. Everyone felt helpless. Today, they had purposely changed directions to separate from Suing Shue and the rest. Who would have thought that they would still meet in the end? However, it was a pity that they did not know that Suing Shue had done all of this on purpose. Ever since Suing Shue confirmed her feelings, she wanted to catch up with Mo Yunjue and the rest. Even though Mo Yunjue did not have any feelings for her, as long as they met, they would still have some feelings for each other. At least, she was much better than the other girls who had never interacted with Mo Yunjue before. However, they did not expect Mo Yunjue and the rest to be so fast. They had already caught up with them at their fastest speed, but they still could not catch up. When night fell, they could only find a random place to rest. However, their luck was not very good. They had only stopped to rest at the same spot, and coincidentally met the skeleton army. Furthermore, the skeleton army appeared directly under their feet, giving them no time to react. A few cultivators had already fallen. This kind of situation was what cultivators feared the most. Before they could react, they were surrounded. Suing Shue and He Bingrue's speed was not bad, and they happened to be standing at the periphery of the pit, so they didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, the speed at which these skeletons appeared was simply too fast. Even if they tried their best to escape, they were still unable to fight back. Thus, they could only shout for help. They could only hope that Mo Yunjue and the others weren't too far away, and could hear their cries for help. Shui, what should we do? He Bingrue's expression was extremely ugly. She didn't think that their luck would be so bad today. If they couldn't find any reinforcements, it was very likely that they would be completely wiped out again. Suingxue shook her head, a hint of panic on her face. I don't know. We can only try our best to escape with everyone. Everyone run. This time, the range of the skeleton army is very scary. I'm afraid that there will be more liches. If we don't leave now, we won't have another chance later. In the team, a rather experienced cultivator hurriedly shouted out. Chapter 39-24. Bailey Hongzhuang, and the rest looked at Suingxue and the rest who were escaping at full speed. Even though they had already used their fastest speed, the skeleton army was like a swarm of locusts, coming out from the ground endlessly. Even though their movements didn't seem fast, they were actually very fast. If the situation continued to develop, the possibility of Suingxue and the rest escaping wasn't high. Suingxue and the rest are really unlucky. The place where they were resting just happened to be where the hole appeared. In such a short period of time, only 6 out of 10 people are left. Ren Zimei couldn't help but lament. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest observed the situation in front of them silently. From what they could see, there was only one hole for the time being. Even though there were quite a number of skeletons, the situation was definitely much better than what they had encountered previously. So this is the skeleton army. Mo Yunjue stared at the numerous skeletons that had appeared in front of him. It was as though the end of the world had arrived, and everything in front of him was darkness. The eerie white skeletons walked in the darkness, giving off cracking sounds. Everywhere they passed by, not even a blade of grass grew, and not a single living thing was left behind. The situation was indeed as described by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, making them tremble in fear. However, only after witnessing the situation with their own eyes would they understand how shocking it was. Bewitching nodded. The abilities of these skeletons are very strong. Luckily, there are many cultivators on Penglai Island blocking them. Otherwise, if they were to go to the outside world, the consequences would be unimaginable. Every skeleton had a cultivation above the purple realm, and cultivators above the purple realm in the outside world were already rare existences. If these skeletons were to appear in the outside world, it would definitely be a disaster. Hearing that, Mo Yunjue's gaze turned grave, and he instantly understood the meaning behind Di Beichen's words. Indeed, compared to these dead things, the cultivators in the outside world can't even withstand a single blow. Should we go and help? Ren Zimei couldn't help but ask. If it was any other cultivator, they would have gone to help at the first moment. But they hadn't expected it to be Suingxue and the rest. This would depend on Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. At this moment, Suingxue and the rest who were running for their lives noticed Bailey Hongzhuang and her group standing far away, and instantly saw hope. Help! He Bingrui hurriedly shouted. Junior brother Mo, help us! Suingxue also said. Ren Zimei subconsciously looked at Mo Yunjue. She still needed to see what Mo Yunjue was thinking. Compared to Suingxue's fervent gaze, Mo Yunjue's face was filled with coldness. As the young master of the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion, it was normal for him to kill people, but to save people, he would never have such an idea. From the beginning to the end, there was only one exception to the idea of saving people, and that was Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. Other than that, the life and death of others were the same to him. After noticing Mo Yunjue's expression, Ren Zimei couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Junior brother Mo's personality was really cold. He didn't even care when a beauty threw herself at him. She really admired his personality. Chapter 39-25. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. They had long heard of this point. Thinking about it, in such a dangerous training ground, if the inner palace disciples didn't help each other, the casualty rate would be even higher. In the next moment, Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng quickly rushed toward Suingxue and the rest. Following Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng's actions, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest didn't delay any longer, and immediately followed closely behind them. When Suingxue and the rest who were running for their lives saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest start to move, A ray of hope appeared on their faces. Ingxue, junior brother Mo and the rest are here to save us, Yi Bingrui said excitedly. Su Ingxue nodded excitedly. Luckily they aren't far from where we are. Now we're saved. This Mo Yunjue isn't as cold as we thought. At least he's still willing to help us. Who knows, maybe it's because of you. Yi Bingrui smiled. Hearing that, Su Ingxue was slightly stunned. She couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue, who was rushing towards them, and said, "That shouldn't be the case. If he really had feelings for me, he wouldn't have been so cold before. A cold person like him would naturally be like that on normal days. However, it's different at this crucial moment. Anyway, I believe you'll definitely be able to capture him." Su Ingxue's face flushed red as she said happily, "I hope that's the case." The speed of Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest was very fast. In a few blinks of an eye, they had already arrived beside Su Ingxue and the rest. Martial techniques were instantly executed from their hands and attacked the skeletons behind them. Boom! Boom! A series of earth-shattering sounds resounded as dazzling martial skills were displayed. Multicolored lights blossomed, illuminating the entire night as if it was daytime. Under this attack, the skeletons instantly turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest joined the battle, the situation of Su Ingxue and the rest eased up a little. Instantly, they felt the pressure lessen, and the sense of urgency dissipated. "Ren Ziheng, thank you." Someone in Su Ingxue's team, who knew Ren Ziheng, expressed his gratitude. They weren't as muddle-headed as Su Ingxue. They had clearly noticed that it was Ren Ziheng and Chu Jinfeng who had taken the initiative before Mo Yunjue had come to help. Ren Ziheng waved his hand and said, "We're brothers from the same sect. If you're in danger, we'll naturally come to help. There's no need for thanks. If it weren't for your support, I'm afraid we would have been completely annihilated here today. In short, we will remember this kindness in our hearts. If you need our help in the future, just let us know." "You are welcome." After the 6 people in Su Ingxue's team got out of their predicament, they didn't continue to flee. Instead, they started to attack the skeleton army. After all, their goal in coming to the training grounds was to deal with these dead things. Only by killing them would they be able to obtain the corresponding points. Bailey Hongzhuang casually executed martial techniques to attack the skeletons with an indifferent expression. Chapter 39-26. In the team, only Bailey Hongzhuang, Bewitching, and Mo Yunjue had broken through to the Starlight Realm, so it was naturally easy for the 3 of them to deal with the skeletons. However, it wasn't so easy for Shangguan Yingying and the rest. After all, the difference in strength between them and the skeletons wasn't very big. As such, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 became the main force. Whenever they noticed someone in danger, they would immediately help and resolve the predicament. Even though Su Ingxue had been an inner hall disciple for quite some time, her cultivation wasn't very strong. Therefore, she couldn't help but fall into a predicament when dealing with the skeletons. Just as she was about to let the skeletons get close to her, an attack suddenly blossomed beside her and got rid of the skeletons that got close to her. Seeing this scene, Su Ingxue couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and subconsciously looked at the person who had attacked. When she saw that the person who had attacked was Mo Yunjue, she couldn't help but be elated. Mo Yunjue had actually helped her. Once she thought of this, Su Ingxue couldn't help but feel excited. As a result, the skeletons got close to her again when she was distracted. Mo Yunjue attacked once again. After helping her solve this problem, he flashed and went to help the other cultivators. Su Ingxue's cheeks flushed red as an indescribable joy blossomed in her heart. For the first time, she felt that the training ground wasn't that disgusting. On the contrary, she really liked the feeling of fighting. When Shangguan Yingying noticed that Su Ingxue had actually started to daydream, she couldn't help but remind her, "Su Ingxue, if you continue daydreaming like this, you might lose an arm or a leg in the next second." She also admired Su Ingxue for being able to be distracted at a time like this. Mo Yunjue was indeed handsome and charming. He was a very famous person in the outside world, so it was normal for young girls to like him. However, There weren't many people who could still be infatuated with him in the middle of a battle. Hearing Shengguan Yingying's reminder, Suing Xue came back to her senses. Her expression became a little awkward, and she could only nod her head. Only then did she raise her spirits to deal with the skeletons. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi were not idle either. They all ran out of their chaos rings to help out in the battle. It wasn't just them. Bewitching and the other two's contracted beasts weren't idle either. They all came out to fight alongside their masters. None of the 6 contracted beasts were of low grades, and their appearance together was extremely shocking. Suing Xue and the rest looked at this scene in a daze. Although they already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had contracted beasts, they still couldn't help but sigh when they saw them. The scale was simply too astonishing. Not only Suing Xue and the rest, but Ren Ziheng and the other 2 also had deep envy in their eyes when they noticed this scene. They had been inner palace disciples for quite some time, but it was a pity that they still hadn't obtained their own contracted beasts. It was truly a pity. Only disciples who had outstanding performances in the inner palace could obtain contracted beasts. In comparison, although they had developed quite well in the inner palace, they hadn't reached an extremely outstanding level, so they didn't have the qualifications to obtain contracted beasts. Chapter 39-27. Among the 6 contracted beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts were the strongest. After all, they had been cultivating with Bailey Hongzhuang for a long time. The other 3 contracted beasts were born not long ago. Even though Long Yanwei had used methods to speed up their growth, they still needed some time before they could truly grow up. Even so, the battle prowess they unleashed was not weak. Yingxue, I heard that Mo Yunjue also obtained a contracted beast. I wonder which one belongs to Mo Yunjue. Yibingruwei couldn't help but ask after noticing the appearance of the 6 contracted beasts. She was really envious of cultivators who had contracted beasts. Suing Xue couldn't help but look at the 6 contracted beasts. She then shook her head. I don't know. However, I believe that his contracted beasts should be very strong. Ren Zimei, who was standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, couldn't help but ask, Junior sister Bailey, what is junior brother Mo's contracted beast? Dark Magic Fox. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. The Dark Magic Fox is still at Master Long's place to speed up its growth. It didn't come this time. I see. A look of understanding appeared on Ren Zimei's face. The Dark Magic Fox is a very rare demonic beast. I didn't expect junior brother Mo to have such a contracted beast. This is something that makes people envious. Senior sister Ren, you will all have one in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Let's hope so. Just as everyone was focused on dealing with the skeleton army, they suddenly realized that the skeletons behind them were no longer ordinary skeletons. Instead, they were skeleton soldiers. Not good. Ren Ziheng frowned as a solemn expression appeared on his face. From the looks of it, the number of skeleton soldiers that are about to appear is quite large. Everyone should be more careful. Those who are weaker, it's best to back off a little. This way, even if you encounter danger, you will still have a chance to escape. The eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others fell on the skeletons in the rear. These skeletons were different from ordinary skeletons. They were also wearing armor, and their majestic appearance was different from ordinary skeletons. Senior sister Ren, what is the strength of these skeleton soldiers? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. The appearance of the skeleton soldiers did not exceed her expectations. Earlier, Ren Ziheng had already warned them that the strength of the skeleton soldiers they encountered would greatly increase as they ventured deeper. At the same time, the strength of the skeletons would also increase. On the outside, the skeleton soldiers are generally at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Depending on the geographical location, the strength of the skeleton soldiers varies. The skeleton soldiers I met last time were at the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Now that we're in a place that's even deeper than the last time I was here, they might be even stronger than the 6th level of the Purple Realm. We can only understand this after we fight with the skeleton warriors. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly, reminding everyone, The strength of these skeleton soldiers is not simple. Be careful when dealing with them. At this moment, the three beasts approached Bailey Hongzhuang from the periphery, looking like they were ready for battle. However, when this group of skeleton soldiers appeared, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were surprised to find that although these skeletons were dead, they were very orderly. Clearly, he couldn't believe all of this. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the same time. It seems that it is not only the Lich that has evolved, the skeleton soldiers have also evolved. Bewitching calmly said. Ren Ziheng's eyes were filled with seriousness. You mean that these skeleton soldiers can only use martial skills after they've evolved? Apart from this reason, I can't think of any other reason. Bewitching's eyes were deep and complicated. According to this situation, the skeleton army will become stronger and stronger in the future. The pressure on the cultivators will also increase. Chapter 39-29. Following Bewitching's words, everyone's heart could not help but sink. If the situation was really like this, then they would be under a lot of pressure in the future. How can these skeleton soldiers use martial skills? That's too strange. Shangguan Yingying's face flashed with a puzzled look. Could it be that they practice martial arts together like us? Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and shook her head. Perhaps the martial arts that these people mastered before they died are still engraved in their bones after they died, so they can use it now. As soon as she said this, everyone was slightly stunned. After thinking carefully, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words did make some sense. In that case, there is indeed a possibility. Look, the martial skills that these skeleton soldiers are using are different. If they use the same martial arts, then when they move together like this, they must use the same martial arts, Ren Ziheng said in a deep voice. When we go back, we must quickly report this news, Bewitching slowly said. In the future, everyone can't choose where to stay based on their previous judgment. We must retreat a little because the strength of these skeletons is no longer what it used to be. The strength of the skeleton soldiers had increased. If everyone still chose the location based on their previous experience in the future, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. The number of cultivators in the Prenglai Palace's inner hall was not many, so they could not afford such a loss. Everyone sighed faintly. The skeletons in the training ground were already a headache for everyone. Now that even the skeleton soldiers had evolved, it would be even more troublesome in the future. Let's not think about this for now. Let's deal with the current situation first, Bewitching said. Everyone only sighed with emotion for a moment, then wholeheartedly entered the battle state. The skeleton soldiers that used martial arts were very difficult to deal with, especially when the level of the martial arts that some of the skeleton soldiers used was not low. When Xiren and the others all felt a lot of pressure. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were more relaxed. After all, the Astral Radiance Realm and the Purple Realm were no longer the same concept, and their strength far surpassed that of when Xiren and the others. As a result, the three of them had to put in extra effort during the battle. Not only did they have to deal with their own opponents, but they also had to help others deal with the skeleton soldiers. Under the leadership of the skeleton soldiers, even the ordinary skeletons' battle prowess increased. Large numbers of skeletons fell in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, and were completely crushed. Now they deeply felt the threat of the skeleton army. They had to completely destroy it, and absolutely couldn't allow it to recover. When the skeleton soldier saw how powerful Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were, it knew that it was no match for them. Immediately, it slapped the ground as if it was summoning something. Looking at the same movement of the skeletons in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other, not knowing what the other was summoning. Master, these skeletons are really getting stranger and stranger. What they do is really like an army. It's amazing. Xiao Hei's eyes were filled with amazement. The last time they saw almost all the ordinary skeletons, there were only a few skeleton soldiers, so they completely did not notice this uniform military style. Chapter 39:30. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, we haven't been here for a few months. I didn't expect the skeleton army to have such a huge change. It's really unbelievable. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Bewitching beside her. Her black and white eyes flashed with a complicated light. She slowly said, Bewitching, I keep feeling that something is wrong. Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with the same gaze and said in a deep voice, I have a guess. There should be something extraordinary in this training ground that caused the skeleton soldiers and the lich to evolve. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Then her eyes widened, revealing a trace of surprise and shock. You're right. There must be a reason for the skeleton soldiers and the lich's sudden evolution. It's impossible for them to evolve for no reason. If there really is something that's promoting their evolution, it must be something extraordinary. We have to find this thing as soon as possible. Otherwise, if this continues, even the ordinary skeletons will evolve. That's right. Bewitching nodded. We have to find that thing. However, this training ground is extremely large. I'm afraid it will take some time to find it. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching were exchanging views, the skeleton soldiers also stopped moving. Then they saw the lich crawling out of the pit. So these skeleton soldiers are actually summoning the lich, Xiren said in a deep voice. From this situation, the lich is an existence that is one level higher than the skeleton soldiers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Heavens, how many liches are going to appear? Shangguan Yingying was very calm when she saw the appearance of the lich. However, when she noticed that the number of lich was increasing, she could no longer maintain her calm. Last time, they only encountered 4 lich. It was already very difficult to deal with them. Now there were a total of 8 lich. Once they thought about the scene of the demonic chant, they felt a headache. Su Yingxue and the rest were completely stunned when they saw this scene. They had never seen so many lich before. Why are there so many lich? Su Yingxue's face was filled with shock. Once these lich chant, the strength of the skeletons will increase. With 8 lich stacked together, the effect is extremely shocking. Yibingrue's face was a little pale. However, after noticing Mo Yunjue and the rest at the side, she calmed down. At least, with 3 cultivators at the Star Radiance realm and above, their safety would be greatly increased. Otherwise, if they encountered such a situation, she would definitely run. Yingxue, you are one of the very few cultivators who are good at sound attacks. Take advantage of today's opportunity to perform well, and let Mo Yunjue see you in a new light. Yibingrue's face revealed a trace of a smile. This was an opportunity that the heavens had specially created for Su Yingxue. Bingrue, what time is it now? You still have the mood to think about this. Su Yingxue shook her head helplessly. However, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Chapter 39:31. Compared to Mo Yunjue, she couldn't help but feel that she wasn't as good as Mo Yunjue. Now, cultivators who were good at sound attacks were very popular in Penglai Palace. Because of this, her status in the inner palace had greatly increased, and she had become a popular figure. No matter which team it was, they would think of ways to invite her to the training grounds. If she could show her outstanding side in front of Mo Yunjue today, perhaps Mo Yunjue would have a whole new level of respect for her. When she thought of Mo Yunjue, her heart couldn't help but thump. Following the appearance of the lich, the chanting sounds quickly resounded. Immediately after, everyone realized that the skeleton army seemed to have received a huge boost from the chanting, and their tyrannical abilities instantly exploded. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others realized that the combat power of the skeleton army had definitely increased, and it wasn't easy to deal with them. Wife, we'll have to rely on you to deal with this lich, Bewitching said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. If other stronger skeletons appeared, she might be a little worried. However, she wasn't afraid of this lich, because her zither technique was coincidentally able to restrain the lich's chanting. However, she also wanted to know how much the strength of these skeletons would increase with 8 liches chanting together. However, at this moment, the sound of a flute rang out. This wasn't a simple flute sound. It contained offensive power, and directly countered the lich's chanting. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but turn her gaze. Previously, she had only heard that there were very few cultivators who were good at sound attacks in the inner palace. She didn't expect to encounter one right away. Suing Xue is actually good at sound attacks? A hint of astonishment appeared in Shangguan Yingying's eyes. She really didn't expect this. Ren Zimei nodded. There aren't many cultivators who are good at sound attacks in the inner palace, and Suing Xue is one of them. Ever since everyone knew that sound attacks could restrain the lich's chanting, Suing Xue's status in the inner palace greatly increased, and there are many people chasing after her. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang revealed a look of understanding. Encountering a lich was definitely a nightmare for an ordinary party. However, if there was someone in the party who could restrain the lich, the chances of victory would be greatly increased. Hearing Suing Xue's low voice, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. Even though Suing Xue had mastered sound attacks, she was still lacking in this aspect. If it was only 1 or 2 liches, Suing Xue would still be able to deal with them. But there were 8 liches, and their combined chanting was extremely powerful. It wouldn't be so easy to deal with them. Suing Xue held a green flute in her hand, and beautiful sounds kept coming out, affecting the lich's chanting. However, she also realized that it was too difficult for her to deal with these 8 liches with her current strength. At most, she could only affect the frequency of their chanting, but it was impossible for her to stop the effect of their chanting. Once a lich appears, only a cultivator skilled in sound attacks will be able to counter it. As He Bingrui spoke, she couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. Ying Xue is one of the few cultivators who are skilled in sound attacks in the inner palace. Hearing He Bingrui's words, Ren Zimei and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. Chapter 39-32. Hongzhuang. From the looks of it, not only has Suing Xue not given up on Mo Yunjue, she seems to be even more infatuated with him. Shangguan Yingying's eyes sparkled with interest. Mo Yunjue had always been a bachelor in their team. If she could help Mo Yunjue find a suitable woman, that would be pretty good. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Previously, when Yin Zhu made his move, his swift and decisive style was probably even more attractive to her. It's not strange for her to have such a reaction. No matter if it was in the past or now, Mo Yunjue had always been the object of adoration of many women. Just like Bewitching, even though she was already by his side, there were still many women who secretly threw flirtatious glances at Bewitching. They saw all of this, but no one paid any attention to it. Hearing this, Shangguan Yingying curled her lips. Even so, I still feel that Yin Zhu is so outstanding, so there should be a very outstanding woman who is worthy of him. Although this Suing Xue looks not bad, she's still a little lacking. Things like love depend on fate. It doesn't have much to do with one's own conditions. As long as they like each other, it's fine, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Her gaze couldn't help but turn towards Mo Yunjue. If Mo Yunjue could really have a woman who could warm him up, that would be extremely good. As if he felt Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Mo Yunjue also turned his gaze over. Those eyes that were as deep as a black hole were still sparkling with deep affection for her. But he suppressed it in the depths of his eyes. To him, no one in this world could compare to Bailey Hongzhuang. She was the only one who was different in this world. Bailey Hongzhuang retracted her gaze. In her heart, she understood that Mo Yunjue still hadn't let go. She still felt indebted to him. Suing Xue was waiting for Mo Yunjue to pay attention to her. But never would she have thought that Mo Yunjue would turn his gaze to Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't help being stunned, and her expression became complicated. Could it be that Mo Yunjue liked Bailey Hongzhuang? She then looked at Bewitching, who was standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang, and erased the thought from her mind. Impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang was a married woman, and Mo Yunjue and Bewitching were friends. It was impossible for something like this to happen. Suing Xue tried her best to execute sound attacks, but she realized that the chanting of the liches was simply too strong. She couldn't even suppress a part of it, which was completely different from what she had encountered in the past. There are simply too many liches. Let's retreat a little, Suing Xue couldn't help but say. Bailey Hongzhuang also realized that under the chanting of the liches, the normal skeleton's strength had increased by 2 levels. The skeleton soldier's strength had also increased. It seemed that the more liches there were, the more the skeleton's strength would increase. If a large number of liches were to appear, she couldn't imagine the situation. From this scene, she could determine how strong the faction that controlled the power of darkness was. It was no wonder that so many factions had attacked together. Such a faction was a heaven-defying existence the moment it appeared. Other people would have to pay quite a hefty price to recruit cultivators, but they could only summon dead things, so there was no need to worry about that. In comparison, it was as if they had unlimited helpers. It was truly terrifying. Chapter 39-33. Ding! Bailey Hongzhuang waved her 5 fingers, and the sound of a zither poured out. Following the sound of the zither, the lich's chanting paused for a moment. Suing Shua looked at the source of the sound in astonishment. When she realized that it was Bailey Hongzhuang, her eyes flashed with intense astonishment. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang took 2 steps back and sat between Bewitching and Emoyunjua. Her 10 fingers fluttered, and the sound of the zither poured out continuously. The crisp sound of the zither was melodious and pleasant to the ears. Compared to the chanting of the lich was suppressed. Under the suppression of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound, the strength of the skeleton, which had increased by 2 levels, was reduced to 1 level. The 8 lich's original target was Suing Shua. When they realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was the powerful opponent, they all turned their attention to Bailey Hongzhuang. An endless stream of elemental energy poured into the zither sound. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a hint of sternness. Thinking back, she didn't put too much effort into the art of zither. However, ever since she knew that the art of zither had a restraining effect on the lich, she specially put more effort into it. Now her art of zither was much more adept than before. In addition to the increase in her strength, the effect naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. As the elemental energy poured in, everyone realized that the power of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound had increased again. Wherever the sound of the zither passed, the skeletons would turn into ashes, as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. Seeing this scene, Bewitching and the rest had a hint of astonishment in their eyes. They didn't expect that in such a short time, Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither would have such a huge improvement. How could they not be surprised? Wow, junior sister Bailey's zither sound isn't ordinary this time. It's much more destructive than the previous time. Renzime's face was filled with shock. Before, when she saw that Suing Shua was unable to deal with it, she had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Suing Shua together would be able to deal with it. But looking at the current situation, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was alone, she would be able to deal with it. Renzime nodded in admiration. Junior sister Bailey's improvement is indeed astonishing. In such a short time, her battle power is already on a different level. They thought that their improvement was already not bad, but compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, there was still quite a gap. This was the training of geniuses. Su was Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither sound. Furthermore, from the current situation, it could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang's wasn't ordinary's as music was hers. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, her sound attack was like displaying her slight skill in front of an expert. Her sound attack could only suppress 2 liches at most, but Bailey Hongzhuang could suppress 8 liches at the same time. This showed the difference between the two. Ingxue, I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's art of zither to be so powerful. Isn't this a little too terrifying? Yibingrui was also dumbfounded. She originally thought that Su Ingxue was the only one in their team who had such an ability, so she could use this chance to perform well. She didn't expect that there would be someone who was so good at art of zither. It was simply an eye-opener. Chapter 39-34. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to cover the chanting and suppress the skeleton army's cultivation. Under her tyrannical elemental energy, the skeleton army in front of her returned to their original state. The skeletons at the back that were closer to the liches were unable to be suppressed. Luckily, Everyone was only in contact with the skeletons at the front. Once the skeletons at the back advanced, they would fall into the range of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound. As a result, the skeletons that everyone was fighting with had the same strength as before. There were no changes to the existence of the liches. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang's zither sound's destructive power was also very strong. A large number of skeletons fell down, and it was very shocking. The three beasts had also joined the battle once again. Everything was the same as before, and there were no changes. When Su Yingxue saw this scene, she was instantly embarrassed. For a moment, she didn't know if she should continue playing the flute or directly join the battle. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang had already suppressed 8 liches by herself. There was no meaning for her to continue playing the flute. Furthermore, although her flute sound had a certain effect on suppressing the lich's chanting, its destructive power wasn't strong, and it didn't have a very good effect. After thinking about it, Su Yingxue still silently put away her flute and joined the battle. Wave after wave of skeletons fell down. The points obtained by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were also continuously increasing. Ren Zimei and the rest couldn't help but reveal a smile on their faces. If it was any other time, they could only quickly escape when they encountered such a situation. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were in the team, the situation was completely different. They were completely able to handle such a situation. Furthermore, the speed at which they killed the skeletons was extremely fast. They felt very satisfied. I really hope that I can break through to the Star Radiance realm quickly. This way, we won't have to be so strained to deal with these skeletons like before. Chu Jinfeng couldn't help but express his feelings. Hearing this, Ren Zimei smiled and nodded. That's natural. It's just that it's not that easy to break through to the Star Radiance realm. I hope that we can all reach it as soon as possible. If everyone in their group had reached the Starlight realm, just thinking about the scene of the battle caused them to feel excited. When the 8 liches saw that their chanting was countered by Bailey Hongzhuang, they immediately used all of their skills, hoping to break Bailey Hongzhuang's zither magic. Bailey Hongzhuang also felt this point. The power of the liches singing together was much stronger than the last time. If she hadn't been practicing the zither these days, she probably wouldn't have been able to restrain this scene. To be honest, if she hadn't seen the lich's chanting ability, she wouldn't have thought that there were so many ways to fight with the zither. Come to think of it, this was one of the benefits she learned from the lich. No matter how hard the 8 liches tried, they were unable to break through Bailey Hongzhuang's line of defense. After a fruitless attempt, the 8 liches chose to give up and return to the pit. Following the retreat of the 8 liches, the skeleton soldiers and skeleton army immediately stopped fighting and began to return to the pit. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest increased their attack power, trying to kill more skeletons. After the living skeletons retreated back into the pit, the ground was once again flat, as if nothing had ever happened. Chapter 39-35. As all the skeletons retreated back into the mine, everyone could not help but heave a sigh of relief as they slumped onto the ground. Fortunately, they took the initiative to retreat. Otherwise, if the battle continued at such a high intensity, even I would not be able to hold on. When Xiren could not help but sigh. Although their cultivation had increased slightly compared to before, the strength of these skeletons was not weak either. They had been continuously using martial arts techniques, and the rate at which their yuan qi was depleted was also very fast. During this process, they had even taken elixirs to replenish their yuan qi, but in the end, the supply could not meet the demand. In a short battle, they could still maintain their energetic state, but if the battle dragged on, they would not be able to hold on. After all, the number of skeletons was endless. In terms of taking turns to fight, they definitely could not be compared to these skeletons. Yes, thanks to junior sister Bailey's zither technique, we were able to successfully restrain the 8 liches. They felt that they could not win, so they retreated. Ren Zimei's face was filled with a smile of admiration. Usually, when we fight with these skeletons, they don't leave until dawn. Today can be considered as the easiest battle. It was all thanks to you guys that we were able to do it. The battle power of a Starlight Realm practitioner is indeed extraordinary. It made me envious. Chu Jinfeng sighed. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest smiled slightly. They also felt that today's battle was not bad. Junior sister Bailey, I feel that your zither technique this time seems to be much stronger than before. Ren Ziheng could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with a trace of curiosity in his eyes. Previously, he had seen Bailey Hongzhuang use her zither technique with his own eyes. But it was not as powerful as today. If the zither technique had such an effect, then they would not have been in such a difficult situation. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Ever since the previous incident, I have focused on cultivating the zither technique. During this period of time, it has been quite effective. In addition to the improvement of my cultivation, the effect is naturally much better than before. I see. Ren Ziheng praised. You can even restrain the 8 liches. This is really extraordinary. If it was any other time, we could only surrender when we encountered 8 liches. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were talking, Suing Xue and the rest slowly walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang's team. Ren Ziheng, thank you for your help this time. Xiao Wenyu clasped his hands and said, Xiao Wenyu, you're too polite. This is what we should do. Ren Ziheng smiled. Xiao Wenyu's eyes turned to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. I have long heard that Di Shidi's strength is extraordinary. Seeing it with my own eyes today is an eye-opener for me. Senior brother Xiao is too praiseworthy. You, Xiao of Bailey's of the zither technique of liches. If I to eye of it, I would not believe it. If I eye of it of Bailey to be, to the two. I just happened to have mastered the zither technique. Fortunately, I was able to help a little. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a lotus-like smile. To them, saving people was just a matter of convenience. Coincidentally, they also wanted to kill skeletons, so they acted together. Chapter 39-36. Following Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest nodded their heads. Since the skeletons didn't get any benefits today, they naturally wouldn't appear in the same place again, so they could relax and have a good rest. Suing Xue and He Bingrui looked at each other and slowly walked to a place closer to Li Mo and Yin Ju to sit down. When everyone entered a state of cultivation, Suing Xue couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. She saw that Mo Yunjue had already closed his eyes and started to cultivate to recover. Her expression was a little complicated. She was a little shy and a little vexed. She was shy because the person she adored was right beside her, and vexed because Mo Yunjue didn't have any reaction towards her. She clearly knew the meaning behind her purposely sitting closer to Li Mo and Yunju, but the latter acted as if he didn't see her, making her feel helpless. Xue, as long as Mo Yunjue is a block of ice, he still doesn't have any reaction even though we are already sitting here. He Bingrui frowned, her expression filled with helplessness. Any man would have understood such an obvious gesture of goodwill. But Mo Yunjue acted as if he didn't see it at all. So how could she not feel helpless? That's just how he is. Suing Xue sighed. The last time I went to invite him, he was also this cold. He Bingrui's gaze wandered between Mo Yunjue and Suing Xue as she slowly said, Sigh, everything about Mo Yunjue is good. But his personality is too cold. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to melt this block of ice. I believe he won't feel nothing. Although his personality is very cold, there are some benefits. This way, he won't be too entangled with other girls, which I think is pretty good. Suing Xue's face was filled with a joyful smile. Looking at Mo Yunjue's side profile with his eyes closed, she only felt that he was even more handsome. Everything around her seemed to have faded into the background. Only Mo Yunjue's appearance was deeply imprinted in her heart, causing her heart to beat wildly. In my opinion, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. No matter how bad he is, you still think he's good. But if it really happens, I think you two are very compatible. He Bingrui smiled and said, Why don't you find a chance to have a good chat with him later and get closer to him? Hearing this, Suing Xue pondered for a moment before sizing up Mo Yunjue and saying, Let's wait until my essence energy recovers. The thoughts of Suing Xue and the rest weren't hidden from everyone's eyes. In fact, based on Su Yingshua's current performance, everyone knew that her heart was already attached to Mo Yunjue. It was just that Mo Yunjue hadn't expressed his feelings yet. Compared to the joy of Su Yingxue and the rest, Xiren couldn't help saying, "In my opinion, senior sister Su is probably going to be happy for nothing." "Why?" Shangguan Yingying asked curiously. Yanju obviously doesn't have any feelings for her. It's just that she can't see it. Xiren shrugged his shoulders. Although this girl looks pretty good, she's only average. There's obviously a gap between her and Yunju, so such an outcome is very normal. Chapter 39-37. When Xiren subconsciously looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, Mo Yunjue liked women like Bailey Hongzhuang. Just from this point, it could be seen that Mo Yunjue's taste was not bad. In this world, women as outstanding as Bailey Hongzhuang were rare. Su Yingxue looked not bad, but if she was compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, she would be thrown far behind. Therefore, since Mo Yunjue liked Bailey Hongzhuang, it could be seen that he would definitely not like Su Yingxue, unless he was provoked. However, from the current situation, Mo Yunjue was not provoked. On the contrary, he was still very clear-headed, so it was impossible for such a situation to happen. It was a pity that Su Yingxue did not realize this point. However, from the coldness that Mo Yunjue revealed, it would not take long for Su Yingxue to realize the truth. Everyone fell into a state of cultivation. And, it was just as everyone had expected. The whole night passed peacefully. No more skeleton army came out of the forest. When the sky gradually brightened, everyone opened their eyes one after another. The elemental energy in their body had recovered, and their mental state had recovered to its peak. Yesterday we also killed quite a number of skeletons. The number of points is not small, Shangguan Yingying said with a smile. The main reason they came here to train was to obtain points. After all, they could train in other places, but points could only be obtained in the training grounds. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Indeed, the harvest is quite bountiful. That's because you guys are here. In addition, there are quite a number of people this time, so there is no need to escape. Therefore, the harvest is not bad. Otherwise, if it was any other day, we would have to retreat after fighting for a while. Naturally, the points would be less. Chu Jinfeng shrugged his shoulders. In the past, it was not easy for them to obtain points. Even if they stayed in the training grounds for half a month, the number of points they obtained was not much. However, this time, with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, the number of points they obtained from this battle was quite a lot. Speaking of which, this was the benefit of having power. Jinfeng is right. If it was any other day, it would take us a few days to earn these points. Run Zimei chuckled. Looking at your battle power, I really hope that I can break through to the Starlight Realm quickly. At that time, when we meet these damn skeletons, we will not be so restrained. Go for it, senior sister Run, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a faint smile. Since we have recovered, let's set off. Bewitching said. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest nodded their heads. The appearance of the skeleton army was random. However, they had suffered a loss this time, so they probably would not appear here again at night. They might as well find a suitable place nearby. All right. Ren Ziheng stood up immediately. Let's go. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were about to leave, Su Yingxue suddenly stood out and said, "Wait." Hearing this voice, everyone could not help but stop in their tracks. They looked at Su Yingxue in astonishment, not knowing what she wanted to do. Mo Yunjue also looked at Su Yingxue. A tinge of annoyance flashed past his eyes that were as deep as black holes, but he did not open his mouth. Chapter 39-38. Our team suffered quite a bit of damage after what happened last night, so there are only 6 of us left. If we only rely on the few of us, it will be very dangerous here. Su Yingxue bit her lips with a bashful expression. I have a presumptuous request. I wonder if I can form a team with you guys for the time being? Seeing this, He Bingrui immediately said, Yingxue is right. We won't be able to find other teams in such a short period of time, so it's really dangerous here with only 6 people. If you guys don't mind, Can you form a team with us for the time being? As she said this, He Bingrui couldn't help but give a look to the leader of their team, Xiao Wenyu. Xiao Wenyu was still in a daze at first, but he immediately reacted and nodded his head. Ren Ziheng, we didn't expect to encounter such a situation yesterday and lose nearly half of our members. If you guys don't mind, can you help us? We definitely won't cause any trouble. He didn't expect Suing Xue to take the initiative to mention this matter, but after thinking about it carefully, if they could really form a team with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, it would undoubtedly be great. After all, there were 3 Starlight Realm cultivators in the team, so their battle power would greatly increase, and their safety would be guaranteed. Just like what Ren Zimei and the rest had said, if it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2, they would definitely have been forced to flee in all directions by the skeletons. It would have been impossible for them to earn more points, and it would have been good enough if they didn't get injured. It was because of this that he envied Ren Zimei and the rest. It was a pity that he wasn't familiar with Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, so he couldn't form a team with them. Since Suing Xue had suggested this, he naturally didn't mind going with the flow. If they agreed, it would be beneficial for them. Hearing Xiao Wenyu's words, Ren Ziheng couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect them to come up with such a suggestion. He couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, asking, "What do you guys think?" Although he was in the same team as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, and as the senior brother, he was also the team leader in name, they knew clearly that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were the backbone of the team. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and their expressions were a bit complicated. They weren't stupid. Suing Xue suddenly mentioning this matter might be because of safety, but the main reason was that she wanted to get close to Mo Yunjue. This way, they couldn't make a decision for Mo Yunjue. After all, the other party had come for Mo Yunjue and had nothing to do with them. Looks like this senior sister Su is quite persistent. Chapter 39-39. Suing Xue's gaze towards Mo Yunjue was filled with anticipation, and her heart was beating wildly. This was the first time she had taken the initiative, and she had no choice. It was not easy for her to have the chance to interact with Mo Yunjue. And if she missed it just like that, who knew when she would be able to find such a chance again? Compared to Suing Xue's anticipation, Mo Yunjue's expression was only cold. "Junior brother Mo, what do you think?" Ren Ziheng asked with some difficulty. It wasn't that he wanted to push the problem to Mo Yunjue, but since Mo Yunjue didn't express his opinion, he didn't know how to answer. In fact, whether Suing Xue and the rest were there or not didn't affect him at all. "We already have quite a number of people in our team," Bewitching said indifferently. The moment he said that, Suing Xue and the rest couldn't help being stunned. Even though Mo Yunjue didn't reject them directly, what was the difference between that and rejecting them directly? Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other in dismay. They had not underestimated the degree to which Mo Yunjue didn't give them any face. Suing Xue would definitely feel terrible to be rejected so directly. Suing Xue's face turned pale. Even though she had thought that Mo Yunjue might not have any feelings for her, she didn't expect Mo Yunjue to reject her so straightforwardly. No matter what, she was still a woman, and he should at least give her some face when rejecting her. However, Mo Yunjue wasn't even willing to give her face. He Bingrui's expression also became ugly, and her gaze towards Mo Yunjue was filled with indignation. "Mo Yunjue, we are from the same sect after all. Can't we just help? Even though our abilities can't be compared to yours, we won't be a burden. As long as we find another team, we will immediately leave. You don't have to be so petty, right?" With He Bingrui's words, the atmosphere immediately changed. No one had thought that He Bingrui would suddenly explode. It had completely exceeded their expectations. However, in the face of He Bingrui's anger, Mo Yunjue acted as if nothing she said was directed at him. His expression was still cold and casual. To him, these people in front of him were just strangers. There was no need for him to pay attention to them. When Ren Ziheng saw this scene, he couldn't help but say, "Junior Marshal sister," he calmed down. "Junior Marshal brother Mo just casually said something. You don't have to be so angry." However, He Bingrue's anger had been completely ignited, and it wouldn't dissipate for a while. What I said is the truth. The cultivators of Penglai Palace have always helped each other in this training ground. He is a man, but he is so stingy. How can I not be angry? He Bingrue's face was filled with anger, and her chest heaved up and down. According to her thoughts, no matter how she looked at it, Mo Yunjue couldn't possibly refuse. However, this guy actually did. Ren Ziheng, we have no choice but to make this presumptuous request. We really don't have any other thoughts. Xiao Wenyu couldn't help but speak up. Normally, it wasn't easy to earn points, and he wasn't willing to give up such a good opportunity. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were currently in the limelight. If they could be on good terms with them, it would be a great thing. Chapter 3940. After noticing Ren Ziheng's helpless look, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but say, "Senior brother Ren, you're our team leader. We'll leave it to you to decide whether to agree or not. We have no objections." To them, rejecting He Bingrue and the others had no effect at all. If they wanted to reject, they would reject. After all, there was no friendship between them. However, Ren Ziheng was different from them. Ren Ziheng and the other two had stayed in Penglai Inner Hall for a long time, and were very familiar with the cultivators in the hall. They must have a certain friendship with Xiao Wenyu and the others. If they rejected at this time, it would undoubtedly damage their friendship. On the contrary, whether Xiao Wenyu and the others followed them or not didn't have any effect on them. It was better to leave the decision to Ren Ziheng. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Mo Yunjue. She saw that Mo Yunjue's expression was gentle. As long as it was Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, he didn't have any objections. She then turned her gaze to Di Beichen. Di Beichen also nodded quietly. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ren Ziheng couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang gratefully. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't said such words, he would really be at a loss today. "If that's the case, let's team up for the time being," Ren Ziheng said. As soon as he said that, Xiao Wenyu's face also revealed a smile. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Thank you. We definitely won't cause any trouble." "You're welcome." Ren Ziheng cupped his fists and said, "Xiao Wenyu, with your strength, you can handle things independently. Naturally, you won't cause any trouble." Then, everyone set off on their journey together. However, compared to the joy of Xiao Wenyu and the others in the team, Suing Xue and He Bingrue didn't have such feelings. Both of them were extremely depressed. Suing Xue lowered her head along the way. She didn't expect that her initiative to treat him with such infatuation would only be met with Mo Yunjue's indifference and disdain. He actually rejected him so straightforwardly. Even if he was just a cultivator he had never met before, he shouldn't have such an attitude. "Bingrue, do you think Mo Yunjue hates me?" Suing Xue's beautiful face was slightly pale, and her hands clenched into fists under her sleeves. An indescribable feeling of grievance and unwillingness exploded in her heart. He Bingrue's expression was also very complicated. Previously, they had thought of everything very well, but Mo Yunjue's attitude just now had undoubtedly poured a bucket of cold water on them, causing their hearts to turn cold. "I don't know either." He Bingrue shook her head. Perhaps this has always been his personality. However, isn't this a little too cold? Moreover, he doesn't give any face to women at all. It's no wonder that so many women in the inner palace have expressed their goodwill, but none of them have succeeded. Come to think of it, there shouldn't be many women who can withstand Mo Yunjue's cold treatment and still remain passionate. Previously, she only felt that Mo Yunjue's personality was cold, and there was also some arrogance in it. After all, geniuses were arrogant. However, from the situation just now, Mo Yunjue was completely unapproachable. Suing Xue sighed. Indeed, it's hard to imagine why he would be so cold. Luckily, he's not only like this to me. Chapter 3941. Hearing He Bingrue's words, doubt flashed through Suing Xue's eyes. That's right, from their actions, their relationship seems to be very good. Mo Yunjue isn't so cold when he's talking to other people. On the contrary, he seems to be very easy to get along with. Bingrui nodded. Just now, Mo Yunjue had already rejected us, but when Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, he didn't refute at all. On the contrary, he seemed to agree with Bailey Hongzhuang's decision. It's really inconceivable. I really don't understand this. Su Yingxue frowned. She couldn't help but think of the gaze Mo Yunjue had when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She couldn't help but lower her voice. Bingrui, do you think Mo Yunjue likes Bailey Hongzhuang? Bingrui couldn't help but be stunned. She then shook her head. How is that possible? If that's really the case, then Mo Yunjue and Bewitching are love rivals. How can they get along so well? Then why is Mo Yunjue so nice to Bailey Hongzhuang? Su Yingxue was a little jealous. If Mo Yunjue's attitude was cold to all women, it would be fine. However, not only was he not cold to Bailey Hongzhuang, he was very gentle instead. She couldn't see any trace of coldness, which made her a little gloomy. I heard that it's hard for people with such cold personalities to become friends with others. However, once they become friends, they treat each other with absolute sincerity. Come to think of it, this is the reason why Mo Yunjue is so nice to Bailey Hongzhuang. Furthermore, from what I see, not only is he nice to Bailey Hongzhuang, his attitude towards Shengguan Yingying is also very friendly. Don't let your imagination run wild, Bingrui said. Hearing Bingrui's words, the gloominess in Su Yingxue's heart lessened. You're right. If everything is as you say, then I can't give up. If I can really walk into Mo Yunjue's heart, then he will definitely treat me very well, right? Bingrui frowned and said hesitantly. Even if that's the case, it's not an easy thing to walk into his heart. You have to be mentally prepared. This fellow didn't give any face when he rejected people. That kind of rejection wasn't a good feeling. If it happened a few more times, her courage would be destroyed. I can do it. Su Yingxue's heart. Su Yingxue nodded her head. Since Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest can do it, I believe I can do it too. Looking at Su Yingxue's confident look, Bingrui's expression became complicated, but she could only agree helplessly. Good luck. She had been friends with Su Yingxue for so many years, so she naturally understood Su Yingxue's personality very well. Usually, men would fight to coax her, so she was already used to such treatment. Now that she was rejected by the other party, she might be able to accept it once or twice, but if it happened too many times, she definitely wouldn't be able to accept it. However, looking at Su Yingxue's excited expression, she didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to Mo Yunjue's side with an apologetic smile on her exquisite face. Yunjue, I'm sorry. Did my decision bring you trouble? Chapter 3942. In the end, this trouble was caused by me. Instead, it was me who made things difficult for you. Mo Yunjue's expression was gentle. His deep and dark eyes lit up the moment he saw Bailey Hongzhuang. In this world, only Bailey Hongzhuang was his ray of sunshine. She was his sun. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression relaxed a little. Actually, this matter doesn't affect us much. It's just that senior brother Run and Xiao Wenyu seem to have known each other for a long time. It's not good for senior brother Run to reject him like this. However, since you're so handsome, it's normal for you to attract the admiration of girls. If this is considered trouble, I'm sure many people would want to get into trouble like this. Mo Yunjue chuckled. Unfortunately, I don't think so. To him, other than Bailey Hongzhuang, he didn't want anyone else. Everyone else was just a burden. If there wasn't anyone else, he would feel more at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If these words were said by another man, she might not believe them. However, since this person was Mo Yunjue, she believed them. With Mo Yunjue's cold personality, getting close to an ordinary person would be troublesome for him. Thinking back, when she first met Mo Yunjue, he was clearly seriously injured. However, he still looked indifferent, as if life and death didn't affect him much. She never thought that their accidental acquaintance would end up like this. Seeing Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang chatting happily, Su Yingshua's expression couldn't help but become complicated. This was because she noticed that Mo Yunjua's smile towards Bailey Hongzhuang was indescribably gentle. Compared to his usual cold appearance, he was like a completely different person when facing Bailey Hongzhuang. It was unbelievable. Su Yingxue kept getting rid of the thought that shouldn't have appeared in her mind, but it still popped up uncontrollably. Could Mo Yunjue be so nice to everyone he was familiar with? However, she clearly felt that the way Mo Yunjue looked at Bailey Hongzhuang was exactly the same as the way she looked at him. At this moment, Bewitching slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face was somewhat heavy. He looked at Mo Yunjue and said, "Yunjue, Hongzhuang and I have a guess." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue's face flashed with a hint of seriousness. What guess? There must be a reason why the skeleton army suddenly had such a huge improvement. It's impossible for them to improve so much for no reason. Therefore, we feel that something incredible must have appeared in this training ground and accelerated the evolution of the skeletons. Mo Yunjue pondered and nodded. What you said makes sense. It's impossible for them to improve for no reason. What do you think it is? We haven't thought of this point yet, but if it appeared, it must be in this training ground, Bewitching said solemnly. So you guys plan to look around here? Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows slightly, immediately understanding the meaning of Bewitching's words. Bewitching nodded. That's right. Since we're already here, why don't we look around first? All right. Mo Yunjue agreed. If it's something bad, it's better to eliminate it as soon as possible. Otherwise, if we let these skeletons continue to evolve, it will be even harder to deal with them in the future. Chapter 3943. When Xiren, Shangguan Yingying, and the others agreed with Bailey Hongzhuang's idea, these skeletons were like monsters and had inexplicably evolved. There must be some sort of treasure that had appeared. Although not a single blade of grass grew in this training ground, it was really hard to imagine the existence of heavenly treasures here. However, since such a change had occurred, there must be some. However, they would only know what it was after they saw it with their own eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others thought of this, they didn't make too much noise. After all, before they found the item, they couldn't make a conclusion. They only paid close attention as they walked. Although Xiao Wenyu and the others felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were acting a little strange, as if they were looking for something, they didn't ask too much. After all, in this training ground, other than skeletons, there was nothing else. Su Yingxue followed Mo Yunjue, thinking about how to get closer to Mo Yunjue. Thus, her gaze was locked onto Mo Yunjue the entire time. However, Mo Yunjue was still cold towards Su Yingxue. He also ignored her gaze, causing Su Yingxue to have no chance to speak. Finally, Su Yingxue gathered her courage and walked in front of Mo Yunjue, saying, "Junior Mo." Hearing this, Mo Yunjue only looked at Su Yingxue indifferently and raised his eyebrows, silently asking what was the matter. Seeing Mo Yunjue like this, Su Yingshue's smile was a little awkward. Speaking of which, she was indeed fine and didn't know what to say. I heard that when you came to Penglai Island from the outside world, you went straight to the Devil Training Tower? Su Yingxue hurriedly composed her words and said. Mo Yunjue nodded and replied indifferently. I didn't expect you to be able to obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Tower so quickly. You're really amazing. Although Mo Yunjue only replied with two uns, Su Yingxue wasn't discouraged. After all, there was a reply. With Mo Yunjue's personality, this was already not bad. Junior Mo, do you need something? Mo Yunjue asked in return, impatience in the depths of his eyes. No. Su Yingxue replied awkwardly. Mo Yunjue then retracted his gaze and continued to look straight ahead. And Su Yingxue was too embarrassed to speak again. His attitude must be because he found her annoying? Thinking of this, Su Yingxue felt gloomy. She just wanted to find a chance to chat with Mo Yunjue and get closer to him. She didn't expect him to have such an attitude, which made her feel extremely awkward. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also didn't miss this scene, and their hearts were somewhat moved. It's not easy for Suingxue for Yunju to reject her so straightforwardly. Xiren shook his head and sighed. It's said that when a man pursues a woman, there's a mountain between them. But when a woman pursues a man, there's a layer of gauze between them. However, I feel that it's not that simple when it comes to Yunju. Shangguan Yingying nodded in agreement. This is for normal men. Yunju is a real ice cube. How could it be so easy to melt him? In my opinion, if a woman wants to move Yunju, she would have to pester him relentlessly. Otherwise, it's impossible to succeed. Chapter 3944. Shangguan Yingying shot a glance at Xiren. According to what you said, wouldn't the woman who could chase after Yunjue be extremely thick-skinned? I don't know if she's thick-skinned or not, but if she's the one chasing after him, it's definitely impossible for her to be thin-skinned. Xiren shrugged his shoulders. Actually, he understood that the other party had to be at the right time, the right place, and the right people to appear. Now Suingxue obviously didn't have the right time, the right place, and the right people. Mo Yunjue's heart was still on Bailey Hongzhuang, so how could she possibly succeed? Bingrue. Suingxue returned to He Bingrue's side with a complicated and defeated expression. Was my flirting too much of a failure? He Bingrue shook her head. Didn't you already guess that it would be like this? Just get used to it. But in front of so many people, I feel so embarrassed. Suingxue couldn't help but look around, her expression filled with worry and shyness. As a woman, chasing after someone wasn't something to be proud of. Furthermore, the other party had rejected her so straightforwardly. Normally, she had always had the attitude of a proud daughter of heaven. Now that she was like this, who knew what everyone would think if this was spread back? That can't be helped. Ibingrue spread out her hands. Mo Yunjue is like this. Didn't those women who were rejected by him act like this too? But, Yingxue, if you really don't have confidence, then forget it. Normally, there are quite a number of men who chase after you. Although they aren't as outstanding as Mo Yunjue, they aren't bad either. At least if you follow them, you won't have to suffer like this, He Bingrue advised. She could see that although Mo Yunjue was outstanding, he wasn't easy to chew. If she could be together with him, she would definitely be the target of envy. However, if she didn't succeed, the process wouldn't be pleasant. But none of them can compare to Mo Yunjue. Suingxue bit her lips. There were countless women in the inner and outer halls who admired Mo Yunjue. If she could become Mo Yunjue's sweetheart, she would definitely become the object of envy of everyone. Moreover, Mo Yunjue was not only handsome but also powerful. Being by his side gave her a sense of security. As long as she thought of this, Suingxue was unwilling to give up. Seeing Suingxue like this, He Bingrue couldn't help sighing. Her imagination was beautiful, but it wasn't that easy to succeed. Forget it. Yingxue, do as you see fit. He Bingrue's expression was helpless. If you really succeed, then no one in Penglai Palace will dare to bully you in the future. Suingxue nodded. Let me try again. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest searched along the way, but they didn't see anything special. Wherever they looked, there was nothing but bare ground, which made them feel helpless. I don't know what it is, but there's nothing around here. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Not only was she looking for the thing that caused the skeletons to evolve, she was also looking for something that could restrain the power of darkness. Unfortunately, she didn't find anything along the way. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.